Hello, I'm Julian Baird, I'm a landscape photographer and welcome to Dartmoor National Park. So you join me on this beautiful summer's evening up here in this fantastic corner of Dartmoor National Park where I have absolutely amazing views I can see all around me, and hopefully this is going to give me plenty of opportunity to capture some really nice landscape images. As the sun starts to set, I'm going to have a little bit of a challenge controlling the exposure in my scene, so this is where the use of filters is going to come into play. But before I tell you about my filters, I'll quickly tell you about the camera that I'm using this evening. Camera setup tonight is fairly straightforward. I've got a tripod, as always, just to keep things nice and stable. I'm using my Nikon Z7, and I've got my super wide angle lens on here. I've got my Nikon Z14-30, and I've got the camera on a 3-second timer. That's about it. Really, all I need to do now is to add in those all-important filters. Now, once I've got my camera set up and I've got my composition picked out, it's time to add in the filters. This is not going to be my final spot for my composition because typically up here it's going to be sort of perched on some rock edge somewhere. So I'm going to do this in the safety in this nice flat bit here. I am going to use a circular polarizer now because I use the Kase system. It's got a magnetic adapter ring in here already attached to my lens. I just clip that in there and that just snaps in place. Nice and easy. And I'm going to put the filter holder in and I just clip that onto the adapter ring there and I screw that in and that's nice and tight. Almost certainly I'm going to have to control the exposure somehow, particularly in the sky. It's going to be a bit bright on the ground. And this is where something like a neutral density grad comes into play. And I've got a 2-stop hard edge grad here. And I'm just going to slot that in the top. And where I position that transition line, I'll do that on the horizon when I get to pick out my final composition. But that's essentially all I'm going to do tonight. Now, I could do things a little bit differently. I really need the polarizer. That's going to help me control some of the haze and saturate some of the colours. Now, I could substitute, of course, that neutral density grad by doing multiple exposures and blending them later on in post-production. But I much prefer to do as much as I can in camera, and this allows me to see instantly what the results are going to be like after I've taken the picture, rather than waiting to get back home and look at it on the computer. As you can see by my face, the sun is getting near its final position in the sky, so I'm going to get ready and pick out some really nice compositions. You join me just as I'm about to take my photograph, and I've got this absolutely fantastic scene here in front of me. I've got all these rocks on the ground and they're creating lots of lovely shapes and patterns as they lead out onto the Tor and then the hills of Dartmoor and beyond. It's a really fantastic scene, and I'm getting some great light from the sun which is setting just behind me, and that's really lifting those rocks from something that would normally be sort of flat and grey. And of course I've got this super sky as well. To help me control the exposure between the foreground and the sky, I'm going to use a neutral density graduated filter, and the one I'm using this evening is a 2-stop hard edge grad. Now that's because the horizon is relatively even, there's nothing cutting through it, so I can use a hard edge transition, and that 2-stop is just going to allow the sky exposure to balance with the foreground exposure, and it'll be well within the dynamic range of my camera. So why don't we just take that picture, and this is a great thing about using filters, I can instantly see the result on the back of the screen and it looks absolutely brilliant. Now, the other thing I should point out is I'm actually shooting with this Nikon 14-30 lens at 14mm, so it's at its widest angle. And despite the fact that I've got a polarizer on, a filter holder, and a graduated filter on, there's absolutely no vignetting at all. One of the great things about this Kase K9 system. But I'm going to carry on taking some pictures because when you get a scene like this, it just has to be photographed. Well, I've had an absolutely fantastic evening of photography. The light has been absolutely fantastic. The sun is just about set, but I'm going to carry on and take a few more pictures. But I hope you've enjoyed this little behind the scenes look about how I capture my landscape photographs and how I use the Kase filter systems. I'll see you again soon.